They tell you that having a child will change your life, but no one tells you what it feels like when that child changes the world. And you have to watch from a distance, unable to protect him, unable to intervene, unable to do anything but trust. My name is Mary. I was chosen to carry the weight of the greatest calling a mother has ever known. But this is not the story of the night angels sang over Bethlehem. It is not about the shepherds or the star or the gifts brought from distant lands. This is about the years that followed, the quiet, hidden years no one speaks about. The years when I had to learn the hardest lesson any parent will ever face. How to release the child you love more than your own breath and trust God with a plan you cannot control. If you are a mother or father struggling to release your children into God's purpose, if you have ever felt misunderstood by the very child you raised, if you have watched them suffer and felt powerless to stop it, stay with me. What I learned in those years of confusion, heartbreak, waiting, and surrender may be exactly what you need today. I was barely more than a girl when the angel came to me. 14, perhaps 15. In Nazareth, that was old enough to be betrothed, but not old enough to understand what it meant when Gabriel said, "You will conceive and give birth to a son, and you are to call his name Jesus." I said yes. I did not fully understand what I was agreeing to. I did not grasp the weight of heaven that would rest upon my shoulders. But I trusted the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I trusted the one who was asking. What I did not understand then was what that yes would cost me. After the Lord spoke to Joseph in a dream, the pregnancy no longer threatened our future. But raising Jesus, that was something no angel prepared me for. From the time he could speak, I knew he was different. Not in the way every mother thinks her child is extraordinary. I mean truly different. He never lied, not once. He never manipulated. He never acted in cruelty or selfishness. He obeyed. Not out of fear, but out of love. When other children argued in the streets of Nazareth, he would listen more than he spoke. There was gentleness in him, but also authority, a quiet strength. And yet, there was something in his eyes, a depth, a knowing, that sometimes unsettled me. It was as if he carried eternity behind them. When he was 12, we traveled to Jerusalem for Passover. On the journey home, we assumed he was among relatives. But by nightfall, we realized he was gone. 3 days of panic, 3 days of searching through crowded streets, 3 nights with barely any sleep. When we finally found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening and asking questions that astonished learned men, I felt relief and frustration rise together in my chest. "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." And he answered me calmly, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be about my father's business?" My father, not Joseph's trade, not our home in Nazareth. His father. I did not fully understand then, but I treasured those words in my heart. I carried them quietly for years. That was the first lesson I learned as a mother. Your children are not your possession. They are entrusted to you by God for a season. And the sooner you learn to hold them with open hands, the less it will wound you when God begins to lead them somewhere you cannot follow. After that day, life returned to ordinary rhythms. For many years, nothing outwardly remarkable happened. He worked beside Joseph. Sawdust clung to his hair. His hands grew strong and calloused. He built tables, beams, doors, things that served ordinary families. And I waited. Simeon's words from the temple echoed in my soul. "A sword will pierce your own soul also." I did not know when that sword would come. I did not know how it would feel, but I knew it would. Then Joseph died. Grief entered our home quietly. Jesus became the provider, the eldest son, responsible, steady, caring for me and for his brothers and sisters. Still, there were no miracles, no heavenly announcements, just obedience, faithfulness, waiting. There were nights I lay awake wondering if I had misunderstood everything. Had I imagined Gabriel's words? Had I clung to hope too tightly? Was the promise meant for another kind of fulfillment? If you have ever questioned a promise God gave you because years passed without visible evidence, then you understand those nights. That was my second lesson. God's timing often feels like delay, but delay is not denial. As a parent, your responsibility is not to force destiny into existence. It is to cultivate character while you wait. And his character was flawless, patient, compassionate, disciplined. I sensed power within him, restrained like a lion behind a closed gate. Then came the wedding in Cana. When the wine ran out, I saw embarrassment spreading across the host's face. In our culture, this was no small inconvenience. It was shame. I looked at Jesus. Perhaps I had waited long enough. Perhaps something in my spirit simply knew the hour was near. "They have no wine," I said to him quietly. He looked at me and answered, "Woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." He was not dishonoring me, but there was distance in his tone, a boundary. And in that moment, I understood something was shifting. I could either cling to my position as his mother, or I could trust the calling unfolding before me. So I turned to the servants and said, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Water became wine, the finest wine of the feast. And while others celebrated, I felt something else, the beginning of release. That was my third lesson. When your child steps into God's calling, you may feel the separation before anyone else does. It will ache. But your role is not to hold them back. It is to support what God is doing, even when you are no longer at the center of their world. His ministry spread quickly after that. Crowds followed him. The sick were healed, the blind saw, the lame walked. But with every miracle, opposition intensified. There was a day when I stood outside a crowded house because we could not enter. Someone told him, "Your mother and your brothers are outside seeking you." And he replied, "Who is my mother? Who are my brothers? Whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother." I felt Simeon's sword pierce deeper that day, but I did not hear rejection. I heard expansion. He was not pushing me away. He was widening the circle of belonging, and I realized something I had to accept. I was not his only family. I was part of something greater. That was my fourth lesson. Your identity cannot rest solely in being someone's parent. I was not only his mother, I was also a servant of God, a disciple. When your children belong first to God, you must be willing to stand beside them as fellow servants rather than cling to them as owners. Then came the arrest, the betrayal, the trial, the accusations. I had heard the rumors. I knew the religious leaders despised him. I saw the tension rising. I sensed danger long before it came. But nothing prepared me for watching soldiers strike my son. Nothing prepared me for seeing him carry a cross through the streets. I followed. What else could I do? I was his mother. I stood at the foot of that cross. I heard the nails. I saw the blood. I watched the sky darken. Every instinct within me screamed to intervene, to shield him, to trade places. But I could not. And in that unbearable moment, I understood something deeper than I ever had before. Sometimes loving your child means standing in their suffering without attempting to rescue them from God's will. That was the fifth lesson. He looked down at me and said, "Woman, behold your son," entrusting me to John's care. Even in agony, he provided for me. But I was not his mission. Redemption was. 3 days later, the women came running with news I scarcely dared to hope for. The tomb was empty. And when I understood that he had risen, something inside me that had been crushed began to breathe again. The sword had pierced me, but it had not destroyed me. Death had not destroyed him either. When I saw him alive, victorious over the grave, I finally understood what every season had been preparing me for. The waiting, the silence, the distance, the pain. All of it had led to resurrection. That was my sixth lesson. The death of your expectations may become the doorway to God's greater glory. What appears to be the end may be the beginning of something eternal. To every parent listening to me now, your children belong to God before they belong to you. You are a steward, not a savior. Their suffering is not always your failure. Their distance is not always rejection. Their calling may lead them somewhere you cannot follow. Your task is faithfulness, not control. My greatest act of obedience was not giving birth in Bethlehem. It was standing at the cross. It was saying yes again, when everything in me wanted to say no. And this is the final lesson that carried me through it all. Surrender is not weakness. it is worship. When I said yes to Gabriel, I did not know I would one day stand beneath a cross. But I said yes again when that day came. Trusting God with your children will cost you your control, your comfort, and sometimes your heart. But it will also give you peace beyond understanding, purpose beyond your imagination, and the privilege of watching God accomplish more than you ever could. So release them, love them, pray for them, stand with them when you can. But do not attempt to take the place that belongs to God alone. The role of Savior has already been filled. And I learned, through joy and through agony, that trusting Him is the only way to survive loving someone called to change the world. If this story reached your heart, it's because God still speaks through surrender, faith, and love. Subscribe and join us for more stories that strengthen the soul.